The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Alright, Super Nintendo time. This is going to have its own video, obviously, for what should be obvious reasons here. Yeah, Super Nintendo. Once upon a time, you were cool if you had one of these. And I remember, there's that clip going around on YouTube of the parents back in 1991 complaining about, what's the Super Nintendo got? I already bought my kids a Nintendo. Why do we need to buy him another one? Yeah, I remember that. I actually went through that with my own folks as well back in the day. Hey, what's the difference with this new Nintendo that's coming out? Better graphics. Is that it? Yeah. Never mind the fact that Super Mario World picked up where Super Mario Bros. 3 had left off in terms of sheer awesomeness. Eventually I wound up getting a Super Nintendo, I believe Christmas of 1993. Yeah, 93, 94-ish or so. And this is actually still my original Super Nintendo from back in the day. So that's why this collection is so huge, compared to the other collections that I have that aren't more recent. The good news is that the Super Nintendo collection is the collection that my folks messed with the least. So I still have pretty much all of my childhood collection of SNES games nowadays. I don't think they gave any of them away. Actually, they actually contributed to my SNES collection when I was off at college, picking up a few titles that I actually wanted but never got in my childhood. So what happened was I went off to college and I hid my Super Nintendo. I kept my N64 out, which probably wasn't a good idea, and I kept my NES out, but I hid my Super Nintendo away in my desk, thinking they'd mess with it. And that was a pretty good idea. My SNES collection is the least messed with, so to speak, out of all the retro systems I had growing up. Unfortunately, I came home one semester to find out that my Super Nintendo had yellowed on the bottom. I was storing it inside a white plastic case that I used for blueprint reading equipment back in high school, and I think there might have been a chemical reaction between the two types of plastic sitting there for that long, or maybe it was just going to happen anyways, but I now have a yellow on the bottom Super Nintendo. Now when these things yellow, it's not just a cosmetic thing. The chemical makeup of the plastic actually changes, and so if you have one of these, you feel a part that isn't yellow and feel a part that is. You'll feel a difference in the plastic. That's because the plastic structure is actually changing, and one of the problems with yellowed SNESs is that they actually start getting brittle, so you can start having pieces chip off and stuff. Now, fortunately, my SNES is yellowing on the bottom, but there's somewhere it's yellowing on the top, around where you put the cartridge in, and that's not a very good thing. This thing still works. I could plug this thing in and play it right now, but I don't have much of a reason to play it anymore because of Famiclones like the Retro Duo. I mean, even the Retro Duo several years ago could output to S-Video with a Super Nintendo game and make SNES games look better than the original system. So I've actually kind of retired this thing. There's only one game I have that plays better on the SNES than on the Famiclones, David Crane's Amazing Tennis. And that's not exactly a title that I play a lot. There's a little net glitch. I believe I made fun of it in my David Crane's Amazing Tennis AVGN parody for Play Some Stuff a while back. The net doesn't render correctly on Famiclones. So, the net in a tennis game that I'm not really fond of. Yeah, that's really something to fret about. So yeah, this thing still works. I don't know what I want to do with it. I mean, imagine the value can't be too crazy because the bottom's all yellowed. And I want to keep this around. Why not? I mean, it's not hurting anything. It's just in the closet. Retro Duo. Why do I still have the Retro Duo over here? Well, this thing, even though I did fry the NES part of it, I think, it still plays Super Nintendo games and outputs S-Video. So it's a nice backup for the Retro Trio. So, a pretty decent system either way. It's smaller, lighter, and uses less power than the SNES, and outputs to S-Video. But this venerable thing, I think my folks might have a Super Nintendo somewhere around their house, too, because the reason why they contributed to my SNES collection is that while I was off at college, even though I left my Super Nintendo locked away, they picked up a used Super NES and a couple of games in case my step-cousins came over and wanted to play something. So, but they also had my N64 and stuff too, so, yeah. Anyways, I don't think they went through my stuff, but, yeah, well, I have most of my original Super Nintendo collection. Actually, I have more of my original SNES collection than I do of any other system that I had growing up. So that says something. Let's get the accessories out of the way first. Game Genie, Video Game Enhancer. not as I've got one of these. I also used to have a Game Genie for the Game Boy. Wonder how much that's going to cost to reacquire if I ever want Game Genie on Game Boy games again. Nah, couldn't use the Game Genie with Super Game Boy, so doesn't really. Yeah. Anyways, Game Genie. I like the NES version the best. I used to try to program random codes. Yeah, I'd beat a game a million times, and I'd mess around Game Genie codes, and then I'd try making my own codes, including such zingers like Papa's in the Nintendo World Cup that actually causes players to be afraid of an airborne soccer ball and run away every time you pass the ball to them. Makes for an interesting game. A Game Genie on the SNES, I wasn't really too into programming custom codes. So I still have it, and it still works, and there are a couple of games that it won't work with, but Game Genie, yeah, still up and running all these years later. Unfortunately, I don't have as many games that I want to really cheat in, but the codes are on the internet, so... And of course, people that hack away at all that stuff have probably all found it out. Have found it all out by now. Super Game Boy. This is something that I had to explain to my folks why I wanted one. They're like, well, Game Boy, why do you want your Game Boy on a TV? Doesn't that defeat the purpose of having a Game Boy? In retrospect, it's a good thing that these folks got me a Super Game Boy, because these things are now, they cost more than some games. And there are issues with adapters like the Super Retro Advance, I believe, does not share the original Game Boy Advance's ability to play old Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. So you'd still need one of these things these days if you had a Game Boy collection that you wanted on the big screen. So these are still necessary until some of these retro companies like Retrobit find ways to make an adapter that emulates the Game Boy emulation on the Game Boy Advance, maybe a future revision of the Super Retro Advance. These things still have a place. And, of course, some people just like messing around with the Mario Paint style things around the borders. Let's see here. This accessory must be cleaned regularly. Yeah, still in pretty decent condition, and I haven't had any plastic yellow on me. So, yeah, Super Game Boy, soon to be augmented by the Super Retro Advance. Alright, let's go through some games here. I don't know where I'm going to put them when I'm done talking about them, but... Classic, Super Mario World. This is the one I had as a kid. It's interesting, you know, I actually did a double take when I got this because there were two designs for the label. There's Super and then Mario World, and then there's one where Super Mario World is all one across the top. So this is my original 100% complete Super Mario World from childhood. Save file number 1 is the Autumn game, all 96. Save file number 2 is the Spring game at 95. The only level that hasn't been beat is that last level in Special World that turns everything from spring to fall. So this sucker is 100% complete. In the days before people started talking about video games in terms of 100% completing stuff, I 100% beat Super Mario World with flying colors. Paladin's Quest, the first, actually an English translation of the game Lennis over in Japan. Paladin's Quest was the first RPG that I ever played and beat. And I had special sentimental, there's some special sentimental value in there too, because the protagonist in this game was 13, and I was 13 when I beat this sucker. This is not from my original childhood collection. I played all my RPGs over a sitter's house who was into RPGs and puzzle games. She was I don't think she was trying to be like the girl gamer stereotype going around that girl gamers only want to play puzzle games and RPGs, but if she was, well, mission accomplished. She totally lived up to the stereotype, although I'm not really a big fan of stereotypes. Anyways, Paladin's Quest. This one was not from my childhood collection. I acquired it later from Bogbean Books and Music, interestingly enough, several years ago, and it's in great condition. This could pass as a game that I had as a kid, even though I didn't. A thumbs up to Bogbean Books and Music. I don't think they sell video games on a regular basis, but the price was right, and I picked it up. SimCity 2000. You can tell we're talking 90s when I talk about a game that I liked best on the Macintosh. Actually saying Macintosh, the whole word, and not just Mac. My anti-static bag getting in the way of the games that I don't want falling off the keyboard off screen. Anyways, SimCity 2000. This game is not worth getting on the Super Nintendo. There is lag everywhere. Or should I say there's mini load times when you try and move around in this game because I think it was a little too big for the SNES. I think SimCity 2000 was a little too big for the SNES. and there's only room on the save file for one save. So you can either build up a city or you can play the scenarios. Not both at the same time. So you have to not build a city in order to play this. Anyways, SimCity 2000, I can only imagine myself playing this again for nostalgia's sake, because SimCity 4 on the PC royally supersedes this game. And I think even if I wanted to play SimCity 2000 again, the computer versions blow this SNES port way out of the water. Yeah, sure, SimCity for the Super Nintendo was a decent port of the PC game at the time, but this game came out several years later, and it shows. Liked it when I was a kid, but not so much now. Anyways, Star Fox. Not from my childhood collection. This one is courtesy of my folks, who, this is one of the games that they picked up for the game collection they set up for my step-relatives while I was away at college, and probably the one that would cost me the most if I was looking for it now. Star Fox. Haven't even hardly played this game past stage 1. All I know about Star Fox is do a barrel roll one of these years. But I don't have to pay an outrageous gougey price from a reseller to pick that one up. Wild Snake. From my childhood collection, it's Tetris with snakes. Got it as a birthday present one year. Never liked it too much. One problem I have with puzzle games, even classics like Tetris and Dr. Mario, is that when you're doing the same thing again and again and again, like dropping blocks or dropping snakes or dropping pills, already sounding redundant, it just gets old. I think these kinds of games go better with Atari veterans who are used to repetitive games that are about the same thing again and again and again, with just getting a higher score being counting as how well you did. Super Mario Kart, a re-release. Oh boy, did this one drive me nuts. It's a re-release version. I don't know if the original version ever worked, but this I can never get working with the Game Genie. It's incompatible with the Game Genie. No idea why. The Game Genie won't even load, which bothered the heck out of me when I was little, because when I was growing up, because the way items work on the AI characters in this game. Sorry, I'm going to take off my watch here. It's just too big and heavy. So I recently, I kind of got an old watch working again. It's a Walmart Athletic Works watch with a scrolling marquee, but with a scrolling LCD marquee and a backlight, unlike the usual nerd watches with the built-in calculators that I wear. So unfortunately, it's just like having it's like a weight bracelet, like one of those fitness bracelets and stuff like that. So it was getting a little unruly, so I'm going to take it off for now. Alright, Super Mario Kart. This game drove me nuts because I could never get the Game Genie to work with it as a kid, because I knew that the way the items work with the AI is everybody has their own AI, which means the Mario Brothers have never-ending starmen. So I used to wonder if there was a Game Genie code that would let you actually play as Mario and Luigi and have never-ending starmen, and be able to finally get back at those guys for trying to block your path, was the term the instruction manual used. But yeah, I used to actually read the manuals, which is one of the reasons why I was really good at video games when I was growing up. But anyways, yeah, Super Mario Kart. From my childhood collection, I remember when this game first came out, when this game came out, I was like, wow, what a stupid idea. The Mario characters driving go-karts. Huh, how fun can that be? Then I played this over a friend's house and wanted it. Super Mario Kart. Yeah, never worked with the Game Genie, but this one is 100% complete. I was surprised to see all my trophies still in there from childhood when I fired it up for the first time after coming home from college. Anyways, Super Baseball Simulator 1000. Not from my childhood collection. This is a game that I got on my own, and I believe this was my first purchase from JJ Games. A couple of bucks. Super Baseball Simulator 1000. It's a non-year-based sports game, one of the few, and one of the ones that I'll still play to this day. I used to like making teams that could do all kinds of ultra moves. Those of you who aren't familiar with the Baseball Simulator series, this game and its counterpart on the NES featured teams with super moves. So you could have a pitcher through fireballs or something like that. So, and you could actually use edit mode to make your own teams. So I thought about making my own league on here at one point. Yeah, Super Baseball Simulator 1000 is the Super Nintendo answer to the NES cart of a very similar 8-bit version of this game. This was a rental for me growing up. I wanted it for Christmas as a kid, but never got it. And that was from, my folks actually went looking for it in the store. And all we had for games back then was Walmart or something like that. Walmart and even some other smaller department stores that the big guys have driven out of business. They went looking for this game, and the person there told them, "Why are you looking for such old games, man? Don't go looking for 5-year-old games. You're not going to find them anymore." Yeah, well, now I'm picking up 20-year-old SNES cartridges and stuff like that. I actually have one or two on order from JJ's right now. So yeah, Super Baseball Simulator 1000, fun game. I realize that it's usually not a good idea to collect sports games on these old consoles, but just like the Nintendo World Cup, that game is a big exception. Zoop! I remember I got this for my birthday when I was in middle school. It's a puzzle. It's an action puzzle game. You go around as a shape, you shoot other shapes, and you change color. If the shape you shoot is a different color, then you become that shape's color. If it's the same color, you blow it off the map. And it's like Tetris in all 4 directions, with stuff coming at you and having to keep it at bay. I remember the commercials for this. How long has he been playing this game? 26 hours. Zoop! America's greatest killer of time, or something like that. You could say it was like a 90s version of Bejeweled or Candy Crush or something like that. It was one of those puzzle games that you just played and played and played and then eventually got sick of it. So, yeah, Zoop. I remember when I said I got it for my birthday, people were like, I said, I got a video game called Zoop. Zoop? That is from my childhood collection, obviously. Tecmo Super Bowl, childhood collection. Again, childhood collection. Can't emphasize it enough. Tecmo Super Bowl. My dad loved the original Tecmo Bowl. This is the game that he got me, so I'd play it, and so he'd get to play it from time to time, but I wound up playing it more than him. Tecmo Super Bowl, baby. I see so many videos on YouTube that show the NES version of this game, and I have no idea why. The Super Nintendo version was what I grew up with, and of course it's... I don't know, is there something about the NES version that's better than the Super Nintendo version? That's the version everybody shows in all the videos when they talk about it and stuff like that. Super Mario All-Stars. There was a promo going on around the time I got my Super Nintendo that if you bought a Super Set, you get a coupon that you could send in for Super Mario All-Stars free. So that's probably how my folks got this, because this never... Actually, I think it did have a box. I think it did have a box and a manual. Yeah, so Super Mario All-Stars, got this with my Super Nintendo when I got everything. One of the things we used to stress about back in the 90s was Super Set versus Control Sets. If you wanted, this game and Super Mario World were known for being really good Mario games, and the way to tell if your parents were cool back then was if they got you a Super Set instead of a Control Set. The Control Set only had a SNES, one controller, and no games. So I can imagine people getting a Super Nintendo, that brand new Super Nintendo, only to find out there were no games for it because their folks got the Control Set instead of the Super Set. I actually knew someone growing up, her parents got her the Control Set for Christmas, and because it didn't have any games, they ran out to the store, and it was right after Christmas, so everything had sold, most stuff had sold. She wound up playing Word Triss, of all games, as her first game on the Super Nintendo until her folks could afford to get her Super Mario World in addition to it. But I wound up with Mario and Mario All-Stars. Good stuff, especially since it was really my first re-release game, so to speak. Sim Earth Childhood Collection. Loved this game as a kid. The box says create planets or destroy them. This is basically a game where you play God. Make a planet, destroy it, do whatever you want. You got 10 billion years. You got 10 billion years if you go into random planet mode, and there's scenarios you can play through, and a special one called Daisy World where you make a planet and only daisies grow on it and stuff like that for plants. So most of the taught me a few things about planetary history, evolution, and some other things as well. This game I actually find more enjoyable nowadays than SimCity 2000, which is interesting because I got this one first. I've seen the PC version of it, and I actually like the SNES version better. So Sim Earth. Great stuff. Probably really cheap these days because this is one of those games that only nerds like me would like. Alright, stack number 2. Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Not from my childhood collection. This is where my folks were prudes for one of the few times that they were actually prudes. because there were some bonus scenes that had slot machines and scratch tickets. They didn't want me having this game. There's some stuff in there you shouldn't have, even though I was in high school and middle school at the time. So, I mean, this game is not from my childhood collection. I got it on my own years and years later from a random seller on Amazon Marketplace because, I wanted to play through this game. This game, I actually did beat it when I was little, though. We rented it one night, and the version that I rented had a dead save battery. So I literally had to burn all the way through this game and defeat Bowser in one sitting. I didn't get very much sleep that night. Yeah. Yep, Yoshi's Island. Got it nowadays. Got it nowadays, though, so that injustice has been corrected. Super Tennis from my childhood collection. I think it was on sale, so my folks got it for me for Christmas. But much like puzzle games, I found that I just couldn't stay interested in this game. But the good news is it's a sports game that's not tied to a year, so it has appeal even this day. But I never hardly played any of it. And by the way, no save battery, so if you played through the tennis tournament mode, you had no way of saving your progress. No save battery on a Super Nintendo game is inexcusable. It was inexcusable 20 years ago, it's inexcusable now. Animaniacs, not from my childhood collection. I wasn't really a big fan of the show. I hated the show. I kind of hated the show because the jingle, or the theme would always get stuck in my head. Still gets stuck in my head to this day. Both the main one and Pinky in the Brain. But, yep, Animaniacs. It's a platformer where you play as Yakko, Wacko, and Dot. And there's some positive reviews of this game, but this is one of the ones that my step relatives were supposed to play to keep themselves busy when I was off at college, and so I kind of inherited it when I wound up with those games in addition to my collection. Messed around on the first level, but it's so kiddie, and I didn't really like the show too much that I'm not so sure. It'd be like if I played a Tiny Toons game nowadays, just a little awkward. Super Play Action Football. This is from my childhood collection. I mentioned in my NES video, or in my first video, that I actually went out and got this version of the game before I got NES Play Action Football for Christmas a couple of years later, probably because my folks got it on clearance or something. Late era, early to mid 90s NES games kind of going out of style. And this is where I learned about new before old, because I had this game long before I had the NES equivalent. And the NES equivalent was just old and dated. So, no, I don't think there was a save battery in here either. So if you played a full season of football, you were in it for the long haul, so to speak. But what I used to do with this game is I'd play in high school mode, and you could type in the names of places. So I'd have like my high school squaring off against another high school and stuff like that. So, still an interesting game to this day. There is some NFL stuff at the top, but it's not tied to a year, so it's not like playing an old Madden game or anything. F-Zero, game that scared me when I was little. I played on a loud TV once. Port Town 2 went off the track, boom! And I kind of jumped at how loud the explosion was, and the big "you lost," and you looked back at your pile of smoke for what used to be your car. And of course, my step relatives, when I was drafted as a babysitter, yeah, that's probably being a little cynical, but when I wound up as Mr. Babysitter because they liked video games too, and hey, why don't you keep these kids occupied for a bit while I kind of relax and stuff like that. Yeah, well, wish I could have gotten some of that babysitting money when my stepmother watched the step relatives. Yeah, this is the game they used to love. They used to be like, oh, the blow-up cars game. Let's play the blow-up cars. They would play Port Town 2 in the time trial mode, and they would never, ever finish a race. They would always just, boom, they just blow up their car all the time and be entertained endlessly by just the cars exploding in this game. This is actually my childhood copy, 100% complete. Still has all my records that I played almost entirely with the Fire Stingray Samurai Goro car. So, childhood copy, save battery still intact. I'm the original owner, and yeah, all these years later it still plays. Although I think I might have that game on the Virtual Console, so don't know why I picked it up on the Virtual Console. Maybe just see, I don't know. Wily Country Club. This is one of those games that I see about 5 or 6 of them in the secondhand shop, just sitting on the shelf going nowhere. All yellowed copies of this piece of junk. Actually, is the plastic yellowing? I think, yeah, there's a little bit of yellowing going on there. So there's a little bit of problems with the plastic on this cart, too. Another, not part of my childhood collection. This is one of the ones I inherited, so to speak. Tried it once, and I was more of an NES Open person growing up, so maybe one of these days I'll get around to trying it again. The golf games, I had one sitter when I was growing up whose family was really into golf. So they had every golf game under the sun, which at the time, since they had only a regular Nintendo, was NES Open and golf. But yeah, there it is. Pilot Wings, original childhood collection, and there's no save battery, but I did beat this. And my folks almost took it away because one time they walked in and I was playing the helicopter mode, and that's where you shoot stuff on the ground, and they were like, "Oh, violence!" And eventually I wound up keeping it because, I mean, there's only 2 stages that had a helicopter shooting little blue balls that would just explode, stuff like that. Never have. Now, it's one of those games where I went through and beat it and then just stopped playing it. Pilot Wings 64 seemed to have a lot more replay value when I got around to that game, but the original Pilot Wings, yeah, still have it. Still works perfectly fine. David Crane's Amazing Tennis. Yeah, too realistic for its own good. Everything that you do in this game has a delay on it because there's so many frames of animation to go through. I roasted this game in an AVGN parody a couple of years ago, and yeah, David Crane's Amazing Tennis. Go check it out. Go check out my Play Some Stuff on this game if you want to see an AVGN parody where I absolutely roast this game. But yeah, this is the only game I have because of Video Store going out of business. When Blockbuster buried the little mom and pops, one of them liquidated, and my folks got this game real cheap in a Video Store plastic case, nonetheless. All it needed to cement that it was from a Video Store was a little Permastruct sticker with instructions like they used to have back in those days. But I just wound up with a Xerox photocopied thing instead, which was even cheesier. David Crane's Amazing Tennis. Folks got this cheap when a Video Store went out of business. And it's now last, but most certainly not least, Sim City. Not from my childhood collection, though I wanted it for years. This is one of those early 90s games that I wanted in the mid-90s, and the Walmart folk gave my folks an attitude when they went looking for it in the stores. Sim City. This is my favorite Sim City game on the SNES, and in my favorite version of the Sim City, the original version of Sim City. And that's what it is, the original 2D version of Sim City ported to the SNES, and with some improvements here and there as well. And I rented this a bunch of times, built up a city of 100,000 people or more before I had to take the game back, before I had to take the rental game back. Wanted this for so many years. Folks could never find it. Somehow they found a copy for my step-relatives while I was off at college. And N64 gave way to GameCube and PS2. Yeah. Well, at least I have it now. Yay! Alright, and that's the stacks. Now, you may have noticed these 2 games over here that have been sitting up here for a while. The reason why they're sitting up here is because they're duplicates that I will probably get rid of at some point. Super Baseball Simulator 1000, it took 2 tries, really, to get this game right. I mean, look at the ratty condition on it. The label's torn, there's a little bit of yellowing on the plastic. Probably got to take it apart and clean these cracks in the middle to get this gunk out of it. This is one that I got from a random person on Amazon Marketplace, and I went and played it, went to create a custom team, and found out the save battery was toast. So the save battery's dead in this one. And the one I got from JJ Games is in far superior condition, and the save battery is A-OK. Now, this thing, probably, I don't know, maybe I'll sell it to maybe I'll take whatever that secondhand store can give me for it, because I know they're not like GameStop or anything. And I have a second copy of F-Zero, courtesy of the folks while I was off at college. But I know this one is not my childhood copy because none of my records are on it. So this is the one that they picked up, along with the Super Nintendo stuff they picked up. And I think there's a little bit of plastic yellowing going on here versus my other one. So pretty decent shape. Actually, I have a box for this. So I could find, if I can buy an F-Zero manual somewhere, I could actually take this as a pretty decent conditioned, complete in box F-Zero to sell off. I just got to get a manual. My folks never gave me the manual because they didn't like the comic book. They thought it was too violent. So I never got the manual, even though I was the original owner of my copy of this game. But if I get this sucker cleaned up, shined up, maybe sacrifice one of my dust covers, sacrifice one of my SNES dust covers for it. Actually, let's do that right now. This one doesn't look too yellowed or dusty. Sacrifice one of my dust covers. All I need to do is find an F-Zero manual, and I will have this game complete in box. And get more for it when I get rid of this duplicate. This piece of junk, though, yeah, rubbish. And that is the Super Nintendo collection. There are some games that I still want, though. I played a lot of classic RPGs over folks' houses. Some of them now are expensive, like the Lufia series. There's also some Ultima games that I wouldn't mind picking up again. And some action puzzle games that I played, like Kablooey and Pushover, are games that I'd probably be interested in reacquiring, and I actually have Kablooey on the way from JJ's later this week, whenever that finally comes in. But that is the SNES collection as it stands right now. A lot left over from my childhood, and it's the system that I'm glad. There's a lot of classic games from that time period that I'm glad I still have. If my folks had messed with my SNES collection the way they messed with my NES or Nintendo 64 collection, things would have it would have been probably a lot more expensive to reacquire some of these. There are some games that I have on the Virtual Console too, in addition to these cartridges. I think I have Super Mario World and some SNES games as well that I just didn't want to go digging out the cartridge for. But alright, that's it for the Super Nintendo. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.